Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We return now with a roundtable discussion of the Arizona immigration law with a focus on its impact on L.A. And here now with opposing views, we have conservative radio host Tony Katz. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And Juan Jose Gutierrez, who's with Vamos Unidos USA. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, as we speak, key portions of the Arizona law are suspended right now. But really, the question I have for both of you, is Arizona making federal law? Mr. Gutierrez, you first.
Well, it is in the sense that it's unfortunately dividing the country. We're at a point in time in our history where we need to address very, very serious problems, and rather than doing this, we're fighting one another on something that, as far as I'm concerned, it is not of fundamental importance. I mean, it is something that can be managed. America has been made great by wave after wave of immigrants that's come to the United States one way or another. And its great capacity to integrate immigrants is what's made, in a big way, America great.
Mr. Katz, your response to that?
America has been made great by immigrants who have come to the country legally and adopted the American way of life. That's what makes America great. An immigrant just showing up and thinking that where they came from is better than where they are now does not make America great. It hurts America. It destroys America. My grandparents were immigrants and made sure they got to America, learned English, and started a family. That makes America great. But SB 1070, the Arizona immigration law, is not about creating new law. It is federal law. And all Arizona was trying to do was enforce that law, and they were told they couldn't. They were told not only they couldn't by the federal government, but also by Judge Bolton in her decision knocking out key provisions within that law. Arizona is well within its rights to protect its citizens and to guarantee the freedoms of lawful citizens over illegal invaders.
Now, you use a term, illegal invaders, and I'm sure that, Mr. Gutierrez, you have a response to that as well. And the fact is, though, that 1070 said that police can't stop someone just for looking like they might be illegal. They have to be questioned in connection with something else. But you still think that's racial profiling?
Of course, it's racial profiling, and what must be remembered is that we live in a country that's called the United States of America, that has a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, and a fundamental right that we all have is the right to due process. You cannot assume that someone on a hunch is guilty of a crime that hasn't been committed and proceed to, to begin interrogating that person, demanding documents, and all sorts of other things. And I think that that's what's wrong with 1070. The other issue is that the enforcement of immigration law is a federal prerogative. I mean, that's a constitutional mandate. It's called separation of powers, and the state cannot intrude in something that is, that is the exclusive domain of the federal government. And that's why the federal Judge Bolton decided to rule the way she did.
Your response?
The federal government, if they were actually in favor of enforcing laws, would also enforce the law in San Francisco, which allows itself to be a sanctuary city in violation of federal law. The law exists. The federal law says...
Well, Los Angeles as well has SB 40, Special Order 40, which says that police may not request or ask to see the documents of anyone, even if they do stop them.
Which is absolutely disgusting, and Mayor Villaraigosa should be ashamed of himself and for all of his actions in regards to SB 1070.
Well, that order precedes him.
And not only that, but also the boycott, which is absolutely abhorrent, which is an attack, a violent attack on business owners in Arizona. The law is not about racial profiling. Not one moment of racial profiling exists within SB 1070. It is about the people of Arizona wanting to defend themselves, wanting to protect themselves, and actually doing the job that the federal government refuses to do. And we know they refuse to do it because San Francisco, a sanctuary city, is allowed to disregard federal law, and the federal government, the Justice Department, does nothing.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Well, again, it's an issue of due process. I mean, yeah, you want to enforce the law, but you don't want to victimize the people that are supposed to be benefiting by all this array of laws that we have in this country. And I think that that's what's wrong with 1070. I mean, it goes after the individual without any due process. I mean, and I don't hear my opponent having any concern about that, because it seems like as long as it's done against people of color, against immigrants, it's okay. If it were done against anybody else, then it might become a problem. Not now.
The conversation that this is about race or this is about color does not come from the people of the political right, nor does it come from the conservatives, the Republicans, the libertarians, the independents, or the moderates. It comes from the racist left. No one's brought up race in this conversation. We're talking about illegal invaders, people who come into the country illegally. Due process is a wonderful thing, but due process belongs to the citizens of the United States. Well, it does not belong to people who are here illegally. Thousands of people every month classified as something called OTM, other than Mexican. This is not an anti-Mexico issue. It never has been, it never will be, and those people who are perpetrating this fraud, saying so, are lying.
Illegal invaders. I mean, the immigrants that come from Mexico or Central America or the Caribbean, they're not invaders. They're needy people that come here because they've been placed in their country of origin to find jobs. Let me remind Mr. Katz that when the terrorists launched their attacks against the Twin Towers in New York, over 250, maybe as many as 400 undocumented immigrants were incinerated with the rest of the people that were victimized on that tragic day. And you know, we seem to forget about that. All of a sudden, all immigrants are unwelcome in the United States of America, not just the original target of our wrath, which were immigrants.
Let me get to a couple of other topics because I think that we should address them. This week we learned of the Secure Communities program that immigration officials can see the fingerprints of every jail inmate now in 25 counties along the border, and it's a way to identify and deport criminal aliens. Now, a quarter of those deported apparently have had no criminal record. They're saying already 47,000 have been deported under this program. Do you think it's a good idea, Mr. Gutierrez?
You know, anytime you send...
That B is more specific to who's who.
You know, in law, we have a legal principle that says that if someone runs the risk of losing their lives once convicted of a crime, law would rather err than send an innocent person to the death chamber. Here we have a situation where over 25% of 47,000 people who had no criminal record were snatched up and deported, divided from their families, from their children. And I think that 25% is way too high. I mean, it's more than just one. In the legal principle that I'm talking about. Janet Napolitano
says that she, by the end of a year, might be able to deport 400,000 this way. Mr. Katz, your ideas on this?
I would say that there are going to be mistakes that happen. There are going to be mistakes that happen, and we should fix those mistakes. But no mistake is going to bring back the life of ranchers who get killed by illegals crossing the border. There is a problem here. And if we don't address the fact that the problem is not about race, that is a myth. The problem is about illegal invaders crossing the border without proper documentation and coming here to do damage and to do harm. If we don't at least own up to that.
Harm in what way?
Yeah.
We can talk about the drug trade. We can talk about national security issues. We can talk about Phoenix being the kidnap capital of the United States. There is harm being done. Ranchers being killed. How about the fact that those people who are bringing people into the United States, the coyotes as they're called, the killing of men and women along the way, the raping of women, there are such things as rape trees that happen along the border. These are issues that we must address. Problems with deportation we should fix.
Yes. The real damage to the country that goes unmentioned is that we got rid of our manufacturing industrial base, and that's why we have now as a big economic and political competitor China. What are we going to do about that? What did undocumented immigrants have to do with that? He mentions the assassination of ranchers. There was one incident of one individual getting killed. No one knows for sure who killed that individual, but undocumented immigrants are getting blamed for that. He mentions loosely rapes. What is he talking about? Where are all the women that are getting raped by the undocumented? The fact of the matter remains that undocumented workers, for the most part, are individuals that come here like they always have done. Irish came here during the potato famine. No one seemed to be concerned about that. They're integrated into America. They're a core pillar of the American political system. Why are we going to be attacking immigrants who are of color just because this is a political season?
Mr. Gutierrez, we are out of time. Mr. Katz, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we will...
This is not about immigrants. This is about illegal invaders. Always remember that. Not about legal immigrants. God bless them. My grandparents were legal immigrants.
Well, I don't see any soldiers running around here attacking Americans, you know, with weapons of mass destruction.
All right. We are, gentlemen, out of time, but I thank you both for coming in and keeping this on point. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
All right. Eyewitness Newsmakers will continue right after this.